All right, good evening, everyone. I am going to be going over how we can hack our recovery. So, first, we have to define what is recovery. Ultimately, recovery is our body rebuilding from a stimulus. So, when we work out, when we do anything that breaks down tissue in our body, we need to recover from that. And that's not just our workouts in the gym, walking, running, any recreation, but also what we do in our daily life. So, being seated at a computer or driving in your car all day, maybe you spend a lot of time in the vehicle. Those are all stresses in our body that require us to recover. So, for the most part, we're talking about recovery as far as when we're sleeping. That's the majority of the time that our body rebuilds and repairs itself. It's when our body actually takes that food that we've eaten that's been broken down and it utilizes that to repair and rebuild the tissues that we've broken down. So, I'm going to be going over a couple of tips that you can implement to make sure that you get the absolute most out of your recovery. So the first thing that we want to address is removing the things that could take away from it or make it worse. So we want to make sure that we, number one, prevent injury so that we're not missing time in the gym because we need to have time to recover. And for the interest of this talk, we're going to be talking predominantly about recovering from the gym, not other stresses on our body and in our life. So, the first one we want to talk about is stretching. This is pretty age old. Everyone's heard this before. You got to stretch. But why? Why do we need to stretch? Our muscle fibers are kind of aligned like this. They interlock with each other. And that's how your actin and myosin actually create a little pull and a contraction. So this little sequence is repeated over and over and over again throughout our muscles. All that science aside, when we work out, those little fibers, they break. We create these little micro traumas. And when we work out, we're hoping that our body overcorrects, especially when we're talking about building muscles or getting better at a skill. We want our body to overcorrect and make it even easier for us to do that so we can progress each time. So, when we work out and you create that micro trauma, those little micro tears are going to be repaired by our body. So our body's going to take those, the materials that we've broken down from our food, hopefully good quality food, proteins, and rebuild that tissue. However, our body does not lay that tissue down perfectly in alignment the way that the fibers are normally orientated. It's going to lay it down kind of patchwork style. So when we stretch out, you can ensure that, number one, the repair is going to be done in the correct way. So where you've created all that micro trauma, we're actually going to be repairing that tissue right in that area, and the repair is going to be aligned with those fibers. So we're going to be even stronger and actually recover from that stimulus. So the second part about stretching, outside of making sure the stimulus that we're created is corrected the right way and we actually get strength in the areas we want, is of course preventing injury. Because if we don't do that, and we continue to work out, we continue to break down tissue, but that repair is done in that haphazard way. It's kind of like taking a rubber band and stapling those ends together. When we go to stress that area, it's not going to respond the same as that normal rubber band. So we want our tissues to be like that full rubber band that can take that stretch and it can come back to that normal tension without any issues. So tip number one, to hack that recovery, we need to stretch. So when do we do that? We want to do it right at the end of the session. So to be clear, in the beginning, I want you to warm up, do something active. Try to be as sport specific as possible. If I was going to go to the gym or say go somewhere and I wanted to work on some sprinting, I would warm up by starting to walk into a jog, into a more moderate jog, and then do some things that are active as far as maybe some high knees, butt kicks, jumping jacks, getting my heart rate up, and then doing the activity that's most similar to what I'm about to do. So working up in speed on the running until you feel comfortable and you feel like you're loose and we can start to actually push our body. So we want to make the warm up sport specific. If I'm going in the gym, just getting your heart rate up on the stair stepper or walking and really breaking maybe just a light sweat so that your body's ready to move. So with that being said, you're warmed up. Now we have our workout, so our stimulus, where we're trying to create the change in our body, whether that's doing cardio, pushing the weights, whatever it is. At the end of this, now we're talking about the stretch. So we want to stretch the areas that we've been working out in the way that those fibers are aligned. So we're going to use a bicep, for example. Those fibers go straight up and down from your elbow up to the shoulder. So if I'm trying to stretch that tissue, I just want to get those fibers completely straight and really create a nice stretch through that area. We want to hold all of our stretches for a minimum of 20 seconds. That's a minimum effective dose. I would tell most people to go 20 to 40 seconds. So we want to make sure to directly stretch out the areas that we've trained that night to ensure that all the repair that happens while we sleep is aligning the fibers in exactly the way that we want. So that is why stretching is really important, to make sure you align the fibers, but to also make sure that when you're working out, if we're not stretching all the time and we're getting that mismatch fiber, eventually that's going to break, which is going to take you out of the gym, which is going to stop you from creating a stimulus, which then we're not going to have to worry about that type of recovery. We just need to get you back to baseline. So help avoid injuries by doing this part. The second thing that we're going to talk about is hydration. Another one that's a very common tip, right? Drink your water. But why do we need to do this? Well, water is vital for so many processes in our body, and ultimately it makes everything in our body just happen easier. So when we're going and you're doing a really hard workout, if your body's dehydrated, all of the normal processes in your body, your digestion, producing energy, maintaining and repairing the body, they're all going to happen a little bit slower. So imagine driving your car with a little bit of the e-brake on. It's just slowing down how everything happens. The other part is that really affects our tissue quality. What I mean by that is how our skin kind of moves and responds. So sometimes like a poor tissue quality, that would be more like leather. Imagine a really dry piece of leather with a weight connected to it, how that would really stretch and then probably eventually break and crack. Well, when we're dehydrated, our tissue more resembles that leather and like an old dried out rubber band that's kind of crusty, as opposed to that brand new band that has the ability to withstand some stress and go back to its original form. When your tissue quality is poor, it's going to allow these what we call plastic changes to happen. So when we stretch that old rubber band, it doesn't bounce back. So we need to hydrate to make sure that we maintain that elasticity in our muscles and that they actually can rebound from the stresses that we put on them. So how much water do you need to have to be adequate, or to make sure that you are hydrated? Probably didn't need the air quotes, but the recommendation for water is half of your body weight in ounces. So put yourself on the scale, get your body weight, and then you want to do half of that in ounces of water. What I would recommend is just figure out a system that works for you. What I mean by that is if you have a really big water bottle that you want to carry around and that's easy and you can actually fit in your daily allotment, that makes it really simple because you have a very easy visual. When I'm done with this water, I know I've got my intake for the day. For myself, I either do the big jug or I buy 3 smaller waters. I know if I drink all 3 or refill one twice after the first consumption, that I've got my water for the day. So do that math for yourself. Really quick homework. You can probably do it without even stepping on the scale and just giving yourself a ballpark of where you're at. So that's a first one that's, the first thing that's going to help in the sense of water. The other part, of course, we're preventing the injury. And when we're hydrated, we're going to recover better. We're able to sleep better. There's a huge tie with anxiety when we're dehydrated. So taking this a little further, if we're dehydrated, if our anxiety's up, you're not going to sleep well. You're not going to get that deep, deep sleep where we do most of the repair. So far, stretching, hydration. So we're going to stretch so that we take advantage of the stimulus that we've created and we actually repair our tissues the correct way. Number 2 on stretching is you're helping prevent injury. Hydrate. We need to take in half our body weight in ounces of water per day. It's going to make all the processes in your body more efficient. It's also going to help you prevent injury, just like stretching. It's going to help us get deep sleep so that we can maximize the amount of recovery that happens and make sure our body can get as much as possible done in that time. So the last one we're going to talk about is alcohol. Alcohol is a huge detriment on our recovery. Heavy drinking, and this isn't even that much, 6 drinks plus, 4 to 6 plus in an evening can take up to 2 days to fully recover from. So that means that your body is not even taking in the stimulus of the workout before, and it's not producing any new muscle or really repairing those tissues fully. It's helping you get back to baseline. It's not repairing the broken down and then taking you past into that overcorrection that we talked about, of what we're going for. The other thing with alcohol that's so detrimental, like we were just talking about sleep, the majority of our repair happens in what's called our REM sleep. So that really deep sleep. Or I should say a little bit lighter, below the really deep. But in between REM and deep, that's the majority of our repair. Alcohol impacts our ability to get into those states, and it really shortens the amount of time. So when we don't have REM sleep, that's when our body and our brain, I should say mostly our brain, converts new skills and really compartmentalizes and creates the neural connections for motor learning. So when we're talking about going to the gym and creating a stimulus for ourselves, if we always follow that up with going to the bar and having alcohol or coming home and having drinks, you're really decreasing the amount of that activity being translated into something that you can do very well and very proficient. So say you're trying to get better at deadlift. That's a very complex movement that involves a lot of muscles moving and coordinating motion at the same time. So that definitely involves a lot of motor learning, especially if you don't come from an athletic background and every move is new to you. So at night, if we're not getting that good sleep and you're not getting better at the motion, it's going to be very frustrating. And for most people, they're going to have some progressive overload built into their program. They're going to be trying to add weight. They might not be patient enough to master the skill before they add weight. That's going to lead to injury. So in a very roundabout way, that's directly how alcohol can lead to even an injury at the gym. We're decreasing that motor learning and the way that you're harnessing that neurological ability. So one more example of what that means. But in all sports, what it really boils down to of how athletic or the performance of someone, it's their neurological control and that hard wiring. Think of baseball, it can be a good example because there's a lot of measurables, speed, strength, just like all the other sports. But what makes someone be able to hit that ball so well or throw it so fast as a pitcher when someone that has the same size and the same frame cannot do that? Or to be able to throw the ball from the outfield where someone might be way stronger and even faster. So how can that person do that? Because neurologically, they can coordinate and orchestrate a very complex motion to produce the most power possible. So these are why these things are so important. That little gap, and this is why the elite athletes are so elite, because we're not taking any little step backs at any time. So this is something that really plays into not just your recovery, but how proficient you are at some of those lifts and how strong you can be. Because strength is really a masterful coordination of your neurology and making sure those muscles move at the exact right moments. We have that stability, you also have mobility. That's a lot of control in our body. So moving forward, the other thing that alcohol really stops or slows down, I should say, that's really important is your protein synthesis. So regardless of your background in nutrition, you've probably heard that protein is needed to build muscles. When we're eating food and our body breaks that down, think of it as just building it down into raw building materials in a construction site, which is our body. So we want to have really good raw building materials, and protein supplies us with that. Protein is also the primary building block for our muscles, for our ligaments, for our tendons. So when we do a workout in the gym, this is exactly what we're trying to repair. So we do not want to slow that down. Imagine your body is that construction site and you have a lot of workers. Say there's 100 workers. The number doesn't really matter. But all of a sudden, the Budweiser truck shows up and it's happy hour for everyone and it's free. So all work stops. Nobody's doing any repair on your body. if you want to check in on that job site, you'd probably be kind of pissed off. So we don't want to create that for our body. We don't want to rob ourselves of that repair time. And even a few drinks can do that. So you really have to weigh the options. You just spend an hour and a half, an hour, hopefully only 30 minutes or less, in the gym, sweating your ass off and working really hard to create a change. So do you want to completely negate that by having just a few drinks? Probably not. The next one, and the last thing, well, I guess I already said that, was the 1 to 2 days. So to recap, those are the 3 things that we can do to hack our recovery and give ourselves a much better chance to produce the muscle and produce the change in our body that we want to see, whether that's building fat, burning muscle, correcting posture, any change, rehabbing a tissue, especially rehabbing when we have an injured area. These things are vital for you to master. So if you struggle with recovery, if you have questions about what I went over, if you have an injury that you're trying to rehab, please reach out to our office so we can help you with these things. I hope that this has been valuable information for you, and share with somebody that needs to hear this so we can help spread the health. So if you have any questions, reach out. But thank you for those of you that joined, and until